Right before his birthday, my husband told me there wouldn't be a celebration this year. But then, I found a reservation for 5 people in his coat pocket, booked at a 5-star restaurant, charged to my card, and including his entire family. My name wasn't on the list. I just smiled to myself. Oh, honey, this is a night you will remember for the rest of your life. Welcome back to the Life Lessons channel. Before we get started, let us know where you are watching from. We love hearing from you. Now sit back and listen to this gripping story. Aaliyah Quarles pushed the heavy entrance door of her apartment building open with her shoulder, clutching a bag of groceries to her chest. The November wind was whipping at the hem of her coat, and freezing rain was stinging her neck. She shivered and stepped quickly into the warmth of the hallway. As usual, the elevator was out of order. Walking up to the 5th floor after a 10-hour shift in the accounting department felt like climbing Mount Everest. On the 3rd floor, Aaliyah stopped to catch her breath, leaning against the cold wall and closing her eyes. She was 42 years old, but she felt 60. Her back was aching, her legs were throbbing, and she still had dinner to cook. Marcus, of course, would be stretched out on the couch with his phone. In 20 years of marriage, she had never managed to teach him how to even reheat his own food, let alone cook something himself. The key turned in the lock with a familiar creak. Aaliyah entered the hallway and immediately heard the sound of the TV from the living room. She kicked off her shoes, took off her coat, and carried the bags to the kitchen. Marcus didn't even look up as she passed. He was sitting in his armchair, eyes glued to his phone screen, mindlessly chewing on a handful of chips. "You're home?" Marcus said. It wasn't a question or a greeting, just a statement of fact. "Mm-hmm," Aaliyah responded, setting the bags on the counter. She began taking out the groceries. Chicken for the oven, potatoes, greens for the pot. Tomorrow was Saturday. She could cook enough to last a few days. Her hands moved on autopilot. The same routine for so many years. Work, grocery store, cooking, cleaning. Over and over again. She turned on the faucet to wash the potatoes and suddenly caught her reflection in the dark window over the sink. A tired face, gray strands in her hair that she no longer had time to dye every month. When did this happen? When did she turn into this exhausted woman? "Marcus, you want some chicken?" she shouted toward the living room. "Sure," came the reply. Aaliyah took a knife and started peeling potatoes. The skins fell into the sink with a steady rhythm. Twilight was deepening outside. Somewhere below, children were laughing. Someone slammed a car door. An ordinary evening of an ordinary day. Half an hour later, she set the table. Marcus reluctantly pulled himself away from his phone and walked into the kitchen. He sat in his usual spot by the window and reached for a piece of cornbread. Aaliyah served him a plate of chicken and potatoes. "How was work?" she asked, more out of habit than real interest. "Fine." Marcus dipped a piece of bread into the gravy. "I'm beat. Dealt with clients all day." He worked as a project manager for a construction firm. The pay was average but steady. However, for the last couple of years, he had been complaining more and more about being tired, about how much work he had, and how little he was appreciated. Aaliyah listened and nodded. Her own job wasn't any easier. She was closing the quarterly reports, and the numbers were dancing before her eyes until late at night. "Listen, Leah." Marcus put down his fork and looked at his wife. "About my birthday. I've been thinking." Aaliyah looked up. Her husband's birthday was in a week, on November 25th. Usually, they celebrated at home or at a local diner, inviting friends and his family. She was already mentally planning what to cook and who to call. "Let's not invite anyone this year," Marcus continued, not looking at her. "I'm tired of all the noise. It's too expensive anyway. Let's just sit here, just the two of us. Or maybe nothing at all. I'm not a kid anymore. I'm turning 45. Aaliyah watched him in silence. Something in his tone felt off. He spoke casually, but his eyes were darting around, and his fingers were nervously crumbling bread on his plate. "Fine," she said slowly. "If that's what you want, we'll keep it quiet." "Great." Marcus relaxed visibly. "Every year it's the same old thing. I'm tired of it." He finished his meal and went back to the TV. Aaliyah stayed in the kitchen staring at his half-eaten dinner. It was strange. Marcus always loved celebrating his birthday. He loved being the center of attention, getting gifts and hearing toasts. And suddenly he was tired of it? She stood up, cleared the table, washed the dishes, and listened to the sounds from the living room. Marcus was watching something, laughing occasionally. It was a normal evening, but a bitter taste remained. The next morning, Aaliyah woke up before her husband. It was Saturday. She could have slept in, but her body was used to getting up at 7 in the morning. She dressed quietly and went to the kitchen to put the kettle on. It was still dark outside. November was the dreariest month. Marcus got up around 10. He walked into the kitchen looking sleepy, wearing an old t-shirt and sweatpants. Aaliyah had already managed to make breakfast and wipe down the stove. "You want coffee?" she asked. "Pour me some." He yawned and stretched. "I'm going to hit the shower, then head over to my mama's house. She asked me to hang some shelves." Aaliyah nodded. Mrs. Beverly Vandiver, his mother, lived alone in a small house on the other side of town. She had been a widow for 15 years. She was a tough, sharp-tongued woman who loved to boss around both her son and her daughter-in-law. Marcus went there regularly to hang shelves, fix a leak, or do her grocery shopping. "All right," Aaliyah said. "Tell her I said hi." Marcus went to the bathroom, and Aaliyah poured herself a second cup of tea, sitting by the window and looking at the gray courtyard. Bare trees, wet benches, a playground with peeling paint. They had lived in this apartment for 20 years. 20 years of the same view. Half an hour later, Marcus came out, dressed and groomed. He grabbed his jacket from the rack in the hallway. "I'm out. I'll be back tonight." "Okay," Aaliyah replied. The door slammed. She was alone. The silence in the apartment became almost tangible. Aaliyah finished her tea and went to hang the laundry that was spinning in the machine. As she pulled Marcus's wet windbreaker from the drum, she instinctively checked the pockets. It was an old habit from the days when he used to forget receipts and scraps of paper. Her fingers felt something thick. Aaliyah pulled out a folded piece of paper, unfolded it, and froze. It was a reservation confirmation for a table at the Gilded Age restaurant. Date, November 25th. Time, 7 in the evening. Number of guests, 5. Name for the reservation, Marcus Vandiver. Aaliyah read it 3 times. Her hands shook slightly as she turned the paper over. Nothing on the back, just a printed and neatly folded confirmation. She sank onto a stool right in the middle of the laundry room, still holding the wet jacket and that cursed piece of paper. November 25th, his birthday. 5 people. The Gilded Age was one of the most expensive restaurants in the city, where a dinner for one person cost as much as her weekly paycheck. "Let's not invite anyone. I'm tired of the noise." Aaliyah exhaled slowly. Her heart was thumping in her throat. She stood up, finished hanging the laundry with mechanical movements, and went into the bedroom. She grabbed her phone, opened her banking app, and scrolled through the transactions for the past week. Groceries, utilities, gas. Stop. There it was. 2 days ago, on November 20th, a charge for $800. Recipient, the Gilded Age restaurant. Payment description, banquet deposit. $800 from her card, the one Marcus had convinced her to give him as an authorized user, just in case. For shared expenses, he had said. Aaliyah sat on the bed. Her ears were ringing. She stared at the numbers on the screen and couldn't believe it. He had taken her money, booked an expensive restaurant for 5, and lied to her face about not wanting to celebrate. Who were those 5 people? She tried to think logically. Marcus was 1. His mother Beverly was 2. His sister Kiara was 3. Kiara's son Jalen was 4. And who was the 5th? Probably Aunt Gladys, his mother's sister. Aaliyah closed her eyes. His family. He was going to celebrate his birthday with his family on her dime, without her. She stood up and went to the window. Down in the yard, a woman was walking a dog, a little brown mutt that was happily jumping through puddles, a normal Saturday scene. But inside her, everything was turning upside down. 20 years. For 20 years, she had tolerated his mother, who found a reason to criticize her every time they met. The soup wasn't right, the house was dusty, she wasn't dressed right for the weather. For 20 years she had listened to the lectures from his sister Kiara, who thought she was smarter than everyone else because she took some online psychology courses. For 20 years she had bought gifts for his nephew Jalen, who had been spoiled rotten by the family. And all this time, she thought that at least Marcus was on her side, that at least he appreciated her. Aaliyah went back to her phone and scrolled further through the transactions. October 20th, $500 to Beverly Vandiver with a note for medicine. October 15th, $200 for Kiara's car repair. October 3rd, some youth sports fee for Jalen, $150. In October alone, over $800 went to his relatives. And that wasn't counting the birthday gifts, the groceries she bought for them, or the Uber rides she paid for. When was the last time she bought something for herself? Aaliyah looked at her faded jeans and the stretched-out sweater she had been wearing for 3 years. When was the last time she went out to a cafe with her friends? She barely had any friends left. Sarah, maybe she was the only one. They talked on the phone occasionally, but they only managed to see each other once every few months. There was never any time. It was always work and housework. Aaliyah went back to the bathroom, took the wretched reservation slip from her purse where she had tucked it, and hid it. She hung the jacket to dry. Her hands moved mechanically, but her mind was racing. What should I do? Throw a fit? Confront him when he gets back? But what would that change? He would say he wanted to surprise her, that he was going to invite her, and just hadn't said it yet, that the reservation for 5 included her. He would find some explanation. He always found one whenever she tried to talk about his family, about how they were abusing her patience and her money. Leah, she's my mama. She's on a fixed income. She really needs that medicine. Laya, Kiara's check is small. It's hard for her as a single mom. Laya, don't be selfish. We're family. Family. Except she had always been an outsider in this family. At celebrations, they would cluster together, discussing family stories she wasn't a part of. Mrs. Beverly would talk about what a wonderful child Marcus had been, and what a great career he could have had if he hadn't married so young. Her eyes would always linger on Aaliyah, as if to say, "It's your fault my son's life is wasted." But it wasn't true. They had married when Marcus was 25 and she was 22. They were both working and renting a small room. They had a modest wedding, then saved up for a down payment on a home. Aaliyah worked 2 jobs to save the money as quickly as possible. Marcus tried back then, too. It seemed like they were going to make it. They didn't have children. At first, they focused on the house and their careers. Then they tried, but it didn't happen. They went to doctors. Both were fine, but she never got pregnant. Over time, they stopped trying. Marcus once said maybe it was for the best. Kids are difficult and expensive. Aaliyah had stayed silent then, but something inside her had withered. She wanted a child. She wanted someone who was truly hers. But life had turned out differently. Maybe that was why she tried so hard for his family, trying to earn their love, to become one of them. She bought gifts, cooked for the holidays, helped with money, and listened to endless advice and criticism. And still, she remained the in-law who wasn't good enough for their precious Marcus. Aaliyah went to the kitchen, poured some water, and drank it in one gulp. She looked at the clock. It was 1:30. Marcus wouldn't be back until evening. Usually he lingered at his mother's, having tea or watching TV with her. She took her phone and called her friend. Sarah answered on the 3rd ring. "Leah, hey girl, how you doing?" "Sarah, can I come over? I need to talk." Aaliyah's voice sounded hollow, even to herself. "Of course. Come on over. Is something wrong?" "I'll tell you when I get there." Half an hour later, Aaliyah was sitting in Sarah's kitchen, holding a cup of hot tea. Her friend sat opposite her, listening intently. "So what are you going to do now?" Sarah asked after Aaliyah finished the story. I don't know. Aaliyah shook her head. Honestly, I don't know. If I start a fight, he'll just deny everything or make up some excuse. Laya, think about this. Sarah leaned closer. This isn't just about a restaurant or money. This is about the fact that he has zero respect for you. He doesn't even think he needs to invite you to his own birthday. I know, Aaliyah said quietly. So what's next? You want to keep living like this? Working for everyone else while they treat you like a fool? Aaliyah was silent. She looked out the window where a light rain was falling. A gray sky, gray buildings, a gray life. No, she finally said. I don't. Sarah took her hand. Then something has to change. Aaliyah nodded. Yes, change. But how and what exactly? She returned home by evening. Marcus was already there, sitting in the kitchen, eating leftovers. Where you been? He asked without looking up. Stopped by Sarah's. All right. Aaliyah went into the bedroom and lay on the bed. Her head was pounding. She barely slept all night. She tossed and turned, listening to Marcus snoring peacefully beside her, and she thought. By morning, a decision had formed. She wasn't going to have a scene. No tears, no accusations. She was going to do something else. In the morning, Aaliyah woke up with a clear plan. Marcus was still asleep, sprawled across half the bed. She dressed quietly and went to the kitchen. The first thing she did was call the Gilded Age restaurant. Her heart was racing, but her hands were surprisingly steady. The Gilded Age, how can I help you? A pleasant female voice answered. Hello, Aaliyah swallowed. I have a reservation for November 25th at 7 o'clock, under the name Vandiver. One moment, let me check. Yes, I see it. A table for 5, deposit paid. Do you need to change something? Could you tell me if the guests' names are listed? Aaliyah gripped the phone tighter. Yes, of course. We have Marcus Vandiver, Beverly Vandiver, Kiara Vandiver, Jalen Vandiver, and Gladys Vandiver. Aaliyah closed her eyes. So that was it. His mother, sister, nephew, and aunt. 5. And not a word about her. He hadn't even considered including her on the list. Thank you, she managed to say. Could I ask about the menu? What was ordered? The Tier 3 banquet menu. Salads, main course, dessert. Plus, an open bar within the prepaid amount. A very good choice, I must say. I see. Thank you so much. Aaliyah hung up and sat at the table. Everything was planned. The menu was set, the deposit paid, the guests invited, and all of it with her money behind her back. She poured some water and took slow sips. The anger inside her was strange, cold, calm, and quiet. No hysterics, no tears, just an icy clarity. 20 years. For 20 years she had been convenient, hardworking, compliant, and patient. She earned the money and gave it away for family needs. She cooked, cleaned, and helped his relatives. And for what? To not even be granted an invitation to her own husband's birthday. Aaliyah opened the notes on her phone and started writing. She needed a plan, a clear, well-thought-out plan, no spontaneity. First, cancel the reservation and get the money back. Second, find another place for their celebration. Third, prepare the papers. Fourth, pack her things. She wondered what place would be suitable. It had to be somewhere believable, so Marcus wouldn't suspect anything, and at the same time, somewhere she could talk to them privately, explain everything, and leave. Suddenly, Aaliyah remembered. Her grandmother's house. An old cottage in the countryside, about 30 miles from the city. Her grandmother had passed away 3 years ago, and the house had been left to Aaliyah, her only granddaughter. She hadn't been there in a long time. She only went once a year in the summer to check on things. The house was empty but sturdy. It had electricity and a well for water. It was the perfect place. Aaliyah took her phone and dialed the restaurant again. The Gilded Age. How can I help you? Hello again. This is regarding the Vandiver reservation on November 25th. I need to cancel it. Cancel? The girl sounded surprised. But the deposit has already been paid. Yes, I know. Can I get a refund? According to our policy, if you cancel less than 7 days before the event, only 50% of the deposit is refunded. Aaliyah pressed her lips together. She would lose $400, but it was still better than paying for a banquet for his family. Fine, cancel it. Which account will it be returned to? To the same card used for the payment within 3 business days. Perfect, thank you. She hung up and leaned back in her chair. The first step was taken. Now she had to figure out how to arrange the meeting in the countryside. In the bedroom, Marcus started moving. Aaliyah heard him get up and go to the bathroom. A few minutes later, he walked into the kitchen, looking sleepy and rumpled. "Morning," he grunted, sitting at the table. "Morning," Aaliyah replied evenly. "You want coffee?" "Yeah." She put the pot on the stove and brought out bread, butter, and cheese. A normal morning, as if nothing had changed. Marcus scrolled through the news on his phone, occasionally huffing at headlines. "What you got planned today?" he asked without looking up. "Cleaning, cooking, the usual," Aaliyah said, pouring the coffee. "What about you?" "Oh, you know, I'll be around the house. There's a game on later." Of course, the game. Aaliyah set his cup down and sat across from him. She watched him chew his toast and sip his coffee. This man had been by her side for 20 years, slept in her bed, eaten at her table, and she suddenly realized she didn't know him at all. Or maybe she just hadn't wanted to see the truth. After breakfast, Marcus settled in the living room in front of the TV. Aaliyah cleared the dishes, changed her clothes, and left the apartment. She had somewhere to go. First, she went to see Sarah. Her friend opened the door in a robe with a towel on her head. "Laya, hey, come on in, I just washed my hair." They went to the kitchen. Sarah put the kettle on and sat down. "All right, tell me, what did you decide?" Aaliyah pulled out her phone and showed her the notes with the plan. "For real?" Sarah's eyes went wide. "You're really going to do this?" "Dead serious." Aaliyah nodded. "Sarah, I need your help. On the 25th, in the afternoon, you need to call Marcus pretending to be the restaurant manager." "A restaurant manager?" Sarah squinted skeptically. "And what am I supposed to say?" "That there was a technical issue at the restaurant, a burst pipe or something, and the banquet has been moved to a satellite location. You'll give him the address of my grandmother's house in the country. You'll tell him it's a new rustic pop-up venue. You think he'll believe it?" "He probably will," Aaliyah shrugged. "He won't think too hard about it. The main thing is to sound confident. Can you do it?" Sarah thought for a moment, then slowly nodded. "I can do it. For you, I'll do it. But Leah, are you sure? Maybe you should think about it one more time." "I've been thinking all night," Aaliyah said quietly. "I've been thinking for 20 years. That's enough." Sarah hugged her. "Then let's get this sorted." Aaliyah returned home by lunchtime. Marcus was still in front of the TV, now with a can of beer. She walked past him into the kitchen and started making lunch. Her hands moved automatically, chopping vegetables, stirring the pot, setting the table, while her mind was working. The following days were spent in a strange state of duality. On one hand, everything was normal: work, home, dinners with her husband, banal small talk. On the other hand, a mechanism had started inside her, methodically counting down the time and preparing for the final moment. Aaliyah took an old gym bag from the closet and started quietly packing her things. Documents, her passport, her marriage certificate, bank cards, the most essential clothes. Photos from the album, the ones of her with her grandmother and her parents, who were no longer alive. A few precious mementos, her mother's earrings, her grandmother's scarf, a card from Sarah. She did it bit by bit when Marcus was at work or in the shower. She hid the bag on the top shelf of the closet. He never looked up there. On Wednesday, Aaliyah took a day off work and drove out to the countryside. The drive took a little over an hour. The road wound through rural patches, past fields and woods. November was in full swing. The trees were bare, the sky was gray, and there was a dusting of snow in some places. She parked at the edge of the small town and walked the familiar path. The area was quiet. Only a few families lived here year-round. Most were summer residents. Her grandmother's house stood at the edge of the woods, a one-story wooden cottage with the carved trim her grandmother had loved so much. The gate creaked when Aaliyah pushed it. The path to the porch was overgrown with grass. The key turned stiffly in the lock. The door opened with a heavy sigh. Inside, it smelled of dampness and old wood. Aaliyah walked in and looked around. Everything was in its place. The old table in the middle of the room, covered with a faded tablecloth. The fireplace in the corner. A worn-out sofa by the window. Faded photos on the walls. Her grandmother's dishes on the shelves. Aaliyah walked further and looked into the bedroom. The bed was covered with an old quilt. On the nightstand, a clock that had stopped long ago. It was as if everything had frozen on the day her grandmother last closed this door. She went back to the main room and sat at the table. She had spent all her childhood summers here. Her grandmother had taught her how to bake pies, told her stories, and stroked her hair when Aaliyah cried over her parents' arguments. It was warm and peaceful here. She had always belonged here. Aaliyah took her phone and opened her to-do list. She needed to prepare the house, turn on the electricity, wipe away the dust, check if the lights worked, and get water from the well. She had to make the place look at least somewhat lived in. She spent the whole day at the house, wiping down the table and chairs and sweeping the floor. She found some old candles in the shed just in case. She checked the breaker box. Everything worked. The light bulbs were dim, but they were burning. By evening, the house looked decent enough. Aaliyah sat on the porch, looking at the darkening woods. The silence was absolute, only the wind rustling in the branches. This is where she would tell them everything. This is where she would end this story. On Friday, the day before Marcus's birthday, Aaliyah went to see a lawyer. She found one online and made an appointment. A young woman in her 30s listened to her story and asked a few questions. No children. Assets, a house with a mortgage. Is that correct? The lawyer asked. Yes, the mortgage is almost paid off. 1 year left. All right. You need to file for divorce. I will prepare the documents. You sign them and take them to court. The division of property will happen separately, but usually, without children or disputes, it's settled fairly quickly. Aaliyah nodded. The lawyer printed a divorce petition, filled it out, and handed it over for a signature. Are you sure? She asked, looking Aaliyah in the eyes. Divorce is always hard, emotionally, financially. Maybe you should try to resolve things peacefully? I've tried. Aaliyah took the pen. I tried for 20 years. Now I'm done. She signed her name, clear and certain. The lawyer nodded and put the papers in a folder. All right, come to the court after the weekend. Usually the process takes 2 to 3 months if there are no disputes over the property. Aaliyah left the office with the folder under her arm. Her heart felt strange, both heavy and light at the same time. It was as if a weight had been lifted, but a void had opened up. At home that evening, Marcus was unusually lively, whistling as he packed a bag. Heading to Mama's house tomorrow morning, he said during dinner. I'm going to help her with some shopping for the celebration. What celebration? Aaliyah asked innocently. Oh, you know, she's got a friend coming in from out of town. They're going to get together, he lied effortlessly. You know how those old ladies love to sit around and drink tea. Aaliyah nodded silently. He didn't even bother to come up with a believable lie. He was just certain she would never find out. I see, she said. Well, go ahead and help her. Marcus smiled contentedly and continued his dinner. Aaliyah watched him and thought about how she was seeing this man for the last time as her husband. Tomorrow, everything would change. She barely slept that night. She lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to Marcus's steady breathing. 20 years in the same bed, 20 years side by side. And all that time, she had been alone. On the morning of November 25th, Aaliyah got up before everyone else. She dressed, took her pre-packed bag, and wrote a short note. Don't worry, I'm staying at Sarah's for a couple of days. She left it on the kitchen table. She quietly left the apartment, closed the door without looking back, walked down the stairs, and stepped out into the street. The morning was frosty and clear. the first day of winter. Aaliyah took a bus to the station and then another out to the countryside. The journey felt endless. She looked out the window at the passing fields and towns, thinking about how today her life would be divided into before and after. She arrived at the house around noon. The area met her with silence and a frosty sun peeking through thin clouds. She walked the familiar road carrying her bag. The snow crunched under her feet. The house looked the same as it had 3 days ago. Aaliyah opened the door and brought in her bag. It was cold inside, but not as damp as she had expected. She went straight to the fireplace. She had brought a pile of wood in on Wednesday. She had known how to light a fire since she was a girl. First small twigs, then thicker ones, then the larger logs. Soon, a fire was crackling merrily. Warmth began to spread through the room. Aaliyah took off her coat, hung it on a hook, and looked around. Everything was ready. The table was clean. Chairs were set. On the table lay the folder with the documents, the divorce petition, bank statements, printouts of the transfers to his family, everything she needed to show him. She knew everything, understood everything, and had made her decision. She checked her phone. It was 12:30. Sarah was supposed to call Marcus at 3:00, 4 hours before the supposed banquet. That would give him enough time to gather the family and get here. Aaliyah walked around the room, sat on the sofa by the window, stood up, and walked again. Her nerves were building. Her hands were shaking slightly. She balled them into fists and took a deep breath. No, she wouldn't change her mind. She was just a little nervous. That was normal. What she had been working toward for so long was about to happen. To calm herself, Aaliyah decided to do something simple. She took a thermos of tea she had brought from home and poured a cup. It was hot and sweet, just the way she liked it. She sat at the table and placed her phone in front of her. Time dragged on agonizingly slowly. She watched the screen. 1 o'clock, 1:10, 1:30. Every minute felt like an hour. Aaliyah stood up and went to the window. Outside, the garden was white with snow. Beyond that, the dark woods, quiet and peaceful. No one knew that here, in this little house, the fate of an entire family would be decided today. Though, what family? Aaliyah smiled to herself. A family is when people are together, when they care for each other, when they respect each other. What did she have? The appearance of a family, a habit of living together, convenience for him, and endless patience from her. At 2:00, she called Sarah. "You ready?" "Ready," Sarah swallowed. "You remember what to say?" "I remember." Burst pipe, banquet moved to the rustic pop-up location. "Everything's paid for. Here's the address. I'll be totally professional. Hang in there, Leah. You're doing the right thing." "Thanks, Sarah. Really, thank you." Aaliyah hung up and started pacing the room again. 2:00. 1 more hour until the call. She couldn't sit still. She went to the window, back to the table, adjusted the folder of documents, then walked away again. At exactly 3:00, Sarah's phone would be ringing. Aaliyah imagined Marcus sitting somewhere, maybe already at his mother's, getting ready for the evening. He picks up the phone, sees an unknown number. 5 minutes passed. Sarah called back. "It's done," she said. "He bought it for real." He was surprised at first, asked about the address. "I told him it was an exclusive venue, very trendy right now. I told him there was a bottle of champagne as an apology for the inconvenience. He was happy and said he'd contact his guests right away." Aaliyah exhaled. "Great, thank you so much." "Good luck, Leah. Call me later?" "I will." Aaliyah sat at the table. So everything was going according to plan. Now Marcus was calling his mother, his sister, his aunt, telling them the venue had changed. They needed to drive out to Oak Creek. They were probably surprised, but since it was already paid for and the restaurant itself suggested it, why not? An exclusive pop-up sounded interesting. She imagined them getting ready. Mrs. Beverly was probably putting on her best dress, that dark blue one she wore to every occasion, doing her makeup, fixing her hair. Kiara was probably primping too, choosing an outfit. Jalen was probably grumbling about having to drive out of the city instead of going to a restaurant downtown. Aunt Gladys was fussing, packing her purse, and Marcus was happy. Happy that everything was working out, that he had arranged a celebration for himself on his wife's dime, a wife he hadn't even bothered to invite. He was probably looking forward to sitting there, eating, drinking, and being toasted, without Aaliyah, without that annoying wife who was always there, always wanting attention, respect, and love. Aaliyah stood up and went to the fireplace. The fire was dying down. She needed to add more wood. She opened the door and put in a few logs. The flames greedily licked the dry wood. 4 o'clock. They were about an hour away, maybe a little more. It was a long drive, especially if they all came together in Kiara's car or called an Uber. Aaliyah went back to the table, opened the folder, and reread the divorce petition. Dry, formal words. I request the dissolution of the marriage. Joint life is impossible due to... She had listed irreconcilable differences. She hadn't written about the betrayal, though it was a betrayal, even if not with another woman. It was a betrayal of her, of their marriage, of what should have been. Another paper was the property settlement agreement the lawyer had drafted. The house would be sold, the money split in half, no claims against each other. Clean, simple, without unnecessary emotion. Aaliyah put the papers back. Everything was ready. All that was left was to wait. She went to the window again. The sun was setting. The sky was a pale pink. It was beautiful. Her grandmother always said the sunsets in the country were special, not like in the city where there was smoke and dust. Here, the sky was clear, and the sun left slowly, as if saying goodbye until tomorrow. 5 o'clock. Aaliyah put on her coat, went out onto the porch, and stood there breathing the frosty air. It smelled of snow and smoke from the chimneys. In the neighboring houses, fires were also burning. The village was waking up for the evening. A dog barked somewhere, a gate slammed, voices were heard. She went back inside, took off her coat, walked around the room, and adjusted the chairs at the table, even though they were already straight. She just needed to keep her hands busy. 5:30. Her phone was silent. Aaliyah took it, checked it. There was service. The battery was full. Everything was fine. They just hadn't arrived yet. She sat on the sofa, put the phone beside her, closed her eyes, and tried to calm down. Her heart was beating fast. Her temples were throbbing. Breathe, she told herself. Just breathe. Everything will be fine. You're doing the right thing. At 5:50, she heard the sound of an engine outside. Aaliyah jumped up and ran to the window. A car was driving toward the house, a silver sedan like the one Kiara had. The car stopped at the gate. It was starting. Aaliyah stepped away from the window and stood by the table, her hands instinctively clasped in front of her chest. She released them and let them hang by her sides. Stay calm. You're strong. You've thought this through. A car door slammed. Then another. Female voices. A male voice. The gate creaked. Is this the place? Mrs. Beverly's disgruntled voice rang out. This looks like a shack, not a restaurant. Mama, I'm telling you, that's what they said, Marcus replied. A rustic pop-up. I'm sure it's different inside. It better be, Kiara grumbled. I put on new heels and I'm ankle-deep in snow. Jalen muttered something unintelligible. Aunt Gladys was silent. Steps on the path, on the porch stairs, the floorboards creaked. The door swung open. Marcus walked in first, wearing a dark suit, a white shirt and tie, hair groomed, smelling of cologne. Festive. Behind him was Mrs. Beverly in that blue dress with large earrings. Then Kiara, a tall woman in a tight red dress. Behind her was Jalen, a lanky 18-year-old in jeans and a blazer. And last was Aunt Gladys, a stout woman in her 60s wearing a brown suit. They tumbled into the house in a heap, talking loudly, and then froze. Aaliyah was standing by the table, lit by the dim light of the lamp overhead. She was wearing simple jeans and a sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. No festive outfit, just a calm expression on her face. Laya, Marcus turned pale. What are you doing here? "I'm waiting for you," she said evenly. "Come in, take off your coats, or just stand there. Where's the restaurant?" Mrs. Beverly looked around as if expecting to see waiters and set tables. "Marcus, what's going on? I don't understand." Marcus stepped toward Aaliyah. "What the hell is this? We got a call? They said the banquet was here." "You got a call," Aaliyah corrected him. "Actually, my friend called pretending to be the restaurant so you'd come here." Silence fell. The relatives looked at each other. Kiara was the first to understand. "Are you playing a joke on us?" She stepped forward, eyes burning with indignation. "Who do you think you are to—" "I'm Marcus's wife," Aaliyah interrupted. "The one you forgot to invite to your husband's birthday, the one who paid for your banquet. Or rather, the one who was supposed to pay, but didn't." "What are you talking about?" Marcus tried to pull himself together. "What banquet?" Aaliyah pulled the folded slip from her pocket, the one from his jacket. She unfolded it and showed it to them. "Reservation at the Gilded Age, November 25th, 7 o'clock, 5 people. Paid $800 with my card. Guests: Marcus Vandiver, Beverly Vandiver, Kiara Vandiver, Jalen Vandiver, Gladys Vandiver." "My name isn't there." Mrs. Beverly gasped. Kiara looked away. Jalen stared at his phone, pretending it didn't concern him. Aunt Gladys blinked in confusion. Marcus opened his mouth, then closed it. His face turned red. "Laya, it's not what you think. It's not." Aaliyah smiled. "Oh? Was it a surprise for me? Were you going to invite me at the last minute? Or maybe you were planning to give me a surprise by coming home drunk and happy after a banquet with your mama and your sister?" "Aaliyah, watch your tone," Mrs. Beverly intervened. "You are speaking to your elders." "I am speaking to the people who have used me for 20 years, Aaliyah snapped. Her voice was quiet but firm. "The people who took my money, my time, and my patience, and never even said thank you." "How dare you?" Kiara flared up. "We don't owe you anything." "Exactly you don't," Aaliyah nodded. "Because I'm not giving anything anymore." She took the folder from the table and pulled out the bank statements. "Look at this. October, Beverly Vandiver. For medicine, $500. Kiara for car repair, $200. Jalen for sports, $150. September, Beverly for a new TV, $400. Kiara for clothes, $300. August—" "Enough!" Marcus stepped toward her, trying to snatch the papers. "I said enough!" Aaliyah stepped back, clutching the folder to her chest. "No, it's not enough. You're going to listen. In the last year, I've transferred over $4,000 to your family. That doesn't count the gifts, the groceries, or the help around the house. $4,000. Do you know what that is to me? That's 4 months of my salary." "We didn't ask," Mrs. Beverly began, but her voice faltered. "You did," Aaliyah said harshly. "You asked constantly. Leah, help me out. My check is small. Leah, help me. It's hard being a single mom. Leah, you won't say no." And I didn't say no because I thought that's what was supposed to happen, that family is when you help each other. She looked them over. Except I was the only one helping. Where was the support when I needed it? When I was in the hospital for surgery 3 years ago, who came? Sarah. My friend. Not my husband, not his mother, not his sister. When I lost my job and was looking for a new one for 2 months, who helped? Sarah again. She lent me money without even asking why or when I'd pay it back. You didn't even call to see how I was doing. This is nonsense. Marcus tried to take control of the situation. Leah, stop the dramatics. Let's go home and discuss this calmly. No, Aaliyah shook her head. I'm not going home, or rather I am, but not with you. I'm taking my things and I'm leaving you. I'm filing for divorce. She placed the petition on the table. You can read this whenever you want. I've already signed it. All you have to do is sign it too, or wait for the court hearing. The house will be sold, the money split in half, no claims. Marcus grabbed the paper, scanning it. His face twisted. Are you crazy? A divorce? For what? Because I wanted to celebrate my birthday with my family? Because I am not family to you, Aaliyah said quietly. I realized that when I saw that reservation. You didn't even think to invite me, not even a thought, because to you, I'm just a wallet. Convenient, reliable, always there, always open. Leia, this is stupid. It's not Leia, it's Aaliyah. And it's not stupid. It's the truth I finally saw. Mrs. Beverly came to her senses and stepped forward. Marcus, don't let her talk to you like that. You are a man. You are the head of the family. What head? Aaliyah laughed. He couldn't even stand up for me when you were insulting me. He was silent when you criticized my cooking, my clothes, my work. He was silent when you hinted that I was a bad wife because we didn't have kids. He was always silent because it was convenient for him. His mama was happy, his sister was happy, his wife was bringing in the money. Everyone was happy. You're going to regret those words, Kiara hissed. You'll end up alone, and nobody will want you. Better alone than with you, Aaliyah snapped. She took her coat from the chair, put it on, and picked up her bag. I'm leaving. The divorce will go through the court if you don't want to sign it amicably. The house documents are with the lawyer. All communication with me will be through the lawyer. That's it. Marcus blocked her path. You're not going anywhere. We're going home right now. Step aside. Aaliyah looked him in the eye. Step aside before I call Sarah. She knows everything and is waiting for my call. If I don't call in 10 minutes, she's calling the police. You're bluffing. Try me. They stood there, looking at each other. 20 years together, and now they were strangers. Aaliyah saw anger in his eyes, confusion, resentment. But not love. Maybe there never had been. Marcus stepped back. Aaliyah walked past him toward the door. She turned at the threshold. By the way, I canceled the reservation. The refund went back to my card. Well, half of it. The restaurant kept the rest as a cancellation fee. But that's your problem. Celebrate here if you want. It's my house, but I'm giving you the evening. For free. She stepped onto the porch. The cold evening air stung her face. Aaliyah took a deep breath and walked down the stairs. Behind her, Mrs. Beverly's voice shrieked, Marcus, are you going to let her leave like that? But Marcus was silent. Aaliyah reached the gate, went out to the road, and pulled out her phone. She called for a car. I need a car to Oak Creek, house number 12. Going to the city. We'll have one there in 20 minutes. Great. She leaned against the fence, looking at the house. The lights were on in the windows. Silhouettes inside, Marcus's family, were talking and gesturing. They were probably shouting, discussing what to do. But she didn't care. She had done what she should have done a long time ago. And her heart felt light, not joyful, not sad, just light, like after a long illness. 20 minutes later, the car arrived. Aaliyah sat in the back seat and gave Sarah's address. Let's go. The car pulled away. The cottage was left behind. The city lights began to glimmer ahead. Sarah opened the door as soon as Aaliyah rang the bell. Her friend's face was anxious, her eyes shining with worry. Well, how did it go? She pulled Aaliyah into the apartment and took her bag. Aaliyah went to the kitchen and sat at the table. Her hands were still shaking slightly. The adrenaline from that conversation hadn't left her blood yet. It's done, she exhaled. I told them everything. I gave him the divorce papers, and I left. Sarah put the kettle on, sat opposite her, and took Aaliyah's hand. You're amazing, for real. I'm so proud of you. Yeah, Aaliyah smiled weakly. But I'm scared, Sarah. Really scared. 20 years of my life ended in one evening. What's next? Next is a new life, Sarah said firmly. You're free, you understand? Free from him, from his family, from all that nightmare. Yes, it's scary, but it'll pass. The kettle boiled. Sarah made tea and brought out some cookies. They sat in the kitchen, drinking hot, sweet tea, and Aaliyah gradually calmed down. The warmth, the light, the silence, and her friend's support, it was all bringing her back to reality. Stay here with me, Sarah said. Stay as long as you need. Thank you, Aaliyah squeezed her hand. Really, thank you. but I don't want to be a burden. I'll stay for a couple of days, and then I'll find a place to rent." "No burden at all," Sarah waved her off. "It'll be more fun for me. I hate being alone." That night, Aaliyah barely slept. She lay on the sofa in Sarah's living room, staring at the ceiling and replaying that moment in her grandmother's house over and over again. The faces of the relatives, confused, angry, offended. Marcus's face, first shocked, then angry, then lost. And she also remembered the good times. There were good times, weren't there? The early years when they first got married. Marcus was attentive then, caring. He brought flowers and called her at lunch to see how she was. They walked in the evenings, went to the movies, and made plans. When did it all end? When did he become indifferent and she become convenient? It probably happened gradually, year by year, habit by habit. He got used to the fact that she would endure anything, understand everything, and always be there. And she got used to not demanding, not asking, and being satisfied with little. And here was the result. In the morning, Aaliyah woke up exhausted with a headache. Sarah had already left for work, leaving a note on the table. "Coffee's in the pot, bread's in the box, butter's in the fridge. Rest up, we'll talk tonight." Aaliyah made herself coffee and drank it standing by the window. Outside it was snowing, small stinging flakes. The city was waking up, cars, people, hustle, a normal Monday. Except for her, this Monday was the beginning of something new. She checked her phone, several missed calls from Marcus from during the night. She hadn't picked up. A couple of messages from unknown numbers, probably Mrs. Beverly or Kiara. She didn't open them. She just blocked them. Instead, there was a message from her lawyer. "Aaliyah, the documents are ready. You can file them with the court any day. Call me when you're ready." Aaliyah dialed the number. "Hello, this is Aaliyah Quarles, regarding the divorce. Yes, I'm ready." The lawyer's voice was brisk and professional. "Are you ready to file?" "I am." "Great. Come by around noon today. Pick up the documents and take them to the courthouse. I'll send you the address." "Thank you." By 2:00, Aaliyah was standing in the courthouse, holding a packet of documents. The line moved slowly. She stood there, looking at the people around her. Some were filing lawsuits, some were picking up decisions, some were just waiting, ordinary people with ordinary problems. Finally, her turn came. The woman behind the window took the documents, scanned them, and stamped them. "Petition accepted. A court date will be set within a month. You'll receive a notice in the mail." "Thank you." Aaliyah walked out of the building. The snow was still falling, but not as heavily. She took a deep breath of the cold air. That was it. The process was in motion. There was no going back. The following days passed in a strange state of limbo. Aaliyah lived at Sarah's, went to work, came back, and helped around the house, trying not to think about what was happening with Marcus or what he was saying. Her phone was silent. He didn't call anymore. He must have realized it was useless. A week later, the notice arrived. The hearing was set for January 20th. Aaliyah marked the date on her calendar, 2 months until freedom. She started looking for a place to live. She checked online listings and went to see apartments. Most didn't fit, too expensive, too far, or in bad condition. But finally, she found a 1-bedroom apartment on the edge of town. It was affordable and clean, and it came furnished. The landlord, an elderly woman, agreed to rent it right away. "I like you," she said. "You seem serious and quiet. You can stay, just keep it clean and pay on time." "I will," Aaliyah promised. She moved in early December. Sarah helped her, bringing her things in her car and helping her unpack. The apartment was small but cozy. The windows looked out onto a yard with a playground, quiet and peaceful. "Well," Sarah looked around the room, "now you've got your own little nest. How does it feel?" "Strange," Aaliyah admitted. "Like I'm free, but also like there's a void." "It'll pass," Sarah hugged her. "You'll get used to it. Now you're the one who decides how to live, what to do, and what to spend your money on." Aaliyah nodded. That was true. For the first time in 20 years, she could manage her own life. December dragged on slowly. Work, home, and occasional meetings with Sarah. Aaliyah was learning to live alone. She cooked what she wanted, not what Marcus liked. She watched movies she enjoyed. She read books and slept as late as she wanted on weekends. And gradually, the void started to fill, not with joy yet, but with a certain peace. She woke up in the morning and didn't feel a weight in her chest. She came home and didn't expect a dissatisfied look from a husband. She went to sleep and didn't replay what she had done wrong that day. Before New Year's, Sarah called, "Leah, let's go somewhere for the holiday, a spa or a cabin. Just the two of us, a real break." "Let's do it," Aaliyah agreed. "I want to get away." They found an affordable resort in the next state, little cabins in the woods, a sauna, and skiing. They rang in the new year by the fireplace, drinking champagne and laughing. Aaliyah didn't think about Marcus or how they usually spent the holidays at his mother's, surrounded by his family. This was different. Light, simple, and hers. In January, the court date arrived. January 20th, 10 in the morning. Aaliyah took a day off work and arrived at the courthouse early, meeting her lawyer in the hallway. "Everything will be fine," the lawyer reassured her. "He signed the consent to the divorce and isn't contesting the property division. It's a formality at this point." Aaliyah nodded. Her heart was in her throat. This would be the first time she'd seen Marcus since that evening in the country. They entered the courtroom. Marcus was already sitting on the other side, next to a man who was likely his lawyer. He looked up when she entered, watched her, then looked away. The hearing didn't last long. The judge read the petition and asked if the parties insisted on the divorce. Both answered affirmatively. The judge announced a recess to finalize the decision. They went out into the hallway. Marcus approached Aaliyah. "Can we talk?" "What do you want to say?" Aaliyah crossed her arms. "I didn't think you'd actually leave." He spoke quietly, looking at the floor. "I thought you'd cool off and come back. We've been together for so many years." 20 years, Aaliyah agreed. 20 years I was convenient for you, and when I stopped being convenient, you didn't even try to keep me. I didn't know what to say. He looked up. "You were right, about everything. I acted like a total jerk." "Yes," she nodded. "You did. But I don't want to discuss it. It's over." "Maybe we could try again?" There was a glimmer of hope in his voice. "I'll change, I promise. I'll be different." "No." Aaliyah shook her head. "We won't try again. I don't want to anymore. I'm sorry." She walked away and sat on a bench far from him. Marcus stood there for a moment, then went back to his lawyer. Half an hour later, they were called back into the room. The judge announced the decision. The marriage was dissolved. The property would be divided according to the agreement. The house sold, the money split 50-50. They were no longer husband and wife. Aaliyah walked out of the courthouse in high spirits. It was cold and clear. The sun was blinding. She took out her phone and called Sarah. "Well?" Her friend answered immediately. "It's done. The divorce is official. I'm out." Sarah's voice was full of joy. "Congratulations! You're officially free. How does it feel?" "Good," Aaliyah smiled. "Really good." February brought news of the house sale. Marcus had found buyers. The deal went through quickly. Aaliyah received her share, over $100,000, money she had earned alongside him, and maybe even more. The first thing she did was pay Sarah back the money she had borrowed when she was looking for work. Sarah resisted, but Aaliyah insisted. "Take it. This is important to me. I want to start my new life without any debts." Then she rented a nicer apartment in a good neighborhood with a modern renovation and furniture, close to her work. She bought herself new clothes, not from the clearance racks like before, but high-quality, beautiful things. She joined a gym for swimming. She started taking Spanish classes, a long-held dream she'd never had the time or money for. Life was gradually coming together. At work, she was promoted to senior accountant with a raise. At the gym, she met women her age. They started going to the pool together and sometimes to a cafe after workouts. One day in March, Sarah suggested a blind date. Leah, come on. Let me set you up with a good guy. A colleague of my brother's, he's divorced, a normal, decent guy. Sarah, it's too early for me. Aaliyah refused. Too early? You're 42. Life is just beginning. Just meet him. If you don't like him, you don't have to see him again. Aaliyah agreed. They met at a bistro, Aaliyah, Sarah, and her husband, and the colleague Michael. He was a man in his 40s, an engineer, calm and with a good sense of humor. The conversation was easy and relaxed. Michael talked about his work, and Aaliyah talked about her Spanish classes. They laughed and joked. At the end of the evening, he asked for her number. Could I call you? Maybe we could go somewhere, just the two of us, if you're up for it? Sure. Aaliyah smiled. They started dating slowly, without pressure. They went to the movies, to galleries, or just walked around the city. Michael was attentive, but not overbearing. He asked about her life, listened without interrupting, shared his own stories, and didn't rush her. By summer, Aaliyah realized she felt good with him. Not a wild, burning passion, but just good, peaceful, and secure. In July, they went on vacation together to a small coastal town. They rented a cottage by the water, swam, tanned, and cooked dinners together. Aaliyah watched the sunset and thought about how good it felt now, how easy it was to breathe. One evening, sitting on the porch with a glass of wine, Michael asked, "Are you happy?" Aaliyah thought for a moment. "You know, I'm not sure if it's happiness in the classic sense, but I'm at peace. I'm living the way I want. I'm doing things I like. I have people around me who appreciate me. That means a lot." "That is happiness," Michael smiled. "We're so used to thinking it's all fireworks and butterflies, but really, it's when your soul is at peace." Aaliyah nodded. "Yes, I think you're right." In the fall, she went back to Oak Creek alone on a weekend. She wanted to check on her grandmother's house and see if everything was okay. She went inside and looked around. Everything was as it had been. The table, the fireplace, the sofa. Except in the corner lay a candy wrapper, likely left over from that evening. Aaliyah picked it up, threw it away, and sat at the table. She remembered standing there almost a year ago, waiting for them, how they walked in all dressed up and happy, and how their faces changed when she told them the truth. She felt like laughing. Back then it felt like the end of the world, but it turned out to be the beginning of a new life, one where she was her own boss. She stood up, walked around the room, and ran her hand over the old table. "Thank you, Grandma. Thank you for leaving me this house. This is where I found the strength to start over." Before leaving, Aaliyah locked the door and hid the key under the porch. Maybe one day she'd come back here again. Or maybe she'd bring Michael here, show him the house, tell him the story, and they'd laugh together about how sometimes you have to tear everything down to build something new. But for now, she was heading back to the city, to her new life, to a job that brought her satisfaction, to friends who valued her, to a man she felt safe and good with, and to herself, the woman she had finally found. The bus sped down the highway, fields and woods blurring past the window. Aaliyah looked at the road and smiled. There was so much ahead. Spanish, which she would soon master. The travels she had dreamed of. Maybe a new career path. She was thinking of switching fields and trying something new. Most importantly, she was no longer afraid. Not of change, not of being alone, not of being herself. For 20 years, she had lived for others. Now, she was living for herself. And it was the best decision of her life. That evening in the country, when she stood before her husband and his family, had been the turning point. Back then, she had said, "This is a night you will remember for the rest of your life." And it was true. Marcus remembered it, and so did she. Except for him, it was a night of loss, and for her, it was the night she found herself. If you liked my story and want to hear more, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. If you'd like to support me, you can do it through Super Thanks. It would mean a lot. In the comments, tell me which city you're watching from and what time it is, so I can see how far my story reaches. I've added 2 more life stories on the screen just for you. Click one now and let's keep spending time together. Much love. See you soon.